The building had long gone silent, yet the echo of footsteps cut sharply through the empty marble corridors of Hale Industries. CEO Elena Rivers froze midway through the dark lobby, her heartbeat loud against the vast silence. She had seen the janitor slip out the side door every night at exactly 1:52 a.m., always carrying the same frayed backpack and moving with a quiet urgency that felt unusual. Tonight, something in her gut pulled her forward. When she watched the security monitors and saw him leave the building again, she grabbed her coat and followed, unaware that this single decision would unravel a truth powerful enough to break her, heal her, and change her forever. Viewers, if this opening already pulls you in, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Act of Kindness, especially if you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen stories that matter. Elena had built her reputation on discipline, precision, and a level of emotional distance that made her both respected and feared. Taking over the company at 34 after her father's retirement was no small feat, and she had perfected the image of the untouchable leader. Yet something about Samuel, the quiet, aging janitor who never spoke unless spoken to, had been tugging at her thoughts for weeks. He was always polite, always early, always the last to leave, yet always tired, a kind of exhaustion that didn't come from sweeping floors but from life itself. Tonight that exhaustion felt like a mystery she couldn't ignore. Samuel walked briskly through the dimly lit streets, weaving between shuttered shops and flickering street lamps. Elena followed at a safe distance, feeling the cold seep into her bones as she questioned her own actions. CEOs didn't follow employees down empty sidewalks at night. They didn't chase shadows hopping to understand the human behind them. But here she was, driven by a sudden need to know the truth behind the sadness she had begun noticing in Samuel's quiet eyes. He finally stopped at a rundown two-story building with a broken neon sign. The paint had peeled off the walls, the gate leaned crookedly on its hinges, and the air around it felt heavy with forgotten stories. Elena watched as Samuel slipped inside through a small back door. She hesitated only a moment before pushing it open just enough to peer in, her breath catching when she saw what he was doing. Inside the dim room, a faint light flickered over a small hospital bed where a young boy lay sleeping under thin blankets. Samuel knelt beside him, smoothing the boy's hair, adjusting the worn blankets with a gentleness that shattered the CEO's composure. She stepped closer, her eyes widening as she realized the truth. The child was extremely thin, his body frail, his breathing slow but steady. A small oxygen machine hummed beside him, old, patched together with tape, clearly failing. Samuel whispered something soft, his voice cracking as he held the boy's small hand. It was then Elena noticed the photographs taped to the wall, a younger Samuel holding a laughing, healthy child. A woman she assumed was his wife standing beside them, smiling warmly, until the later photos shifted into hospital rooms, medical bills, and a final heartbreaking picture. The woman's framed portrait with a single candle placed beneath it. Elena's throat tightened painfully. She hadn't expected this. She had followed a man she barely knew out of suspicion, only to stumble into a life filled with heartbreak, sacrifice, and love so heavy it made the air tremble. As Samuel sat down in the rickety chair beside the bed, his body slumped forward with exhaustion. He removed his shoes, revealing socks with holes, then pulled out a lunchbox filled not with food, but tools and spare wires, small parts he must have collected secretly over time. He began quietly adjusting the failing oxygen machine, hands shaking with fatigue but determination driving every movement. He worked slowly, carefully, checking each connection, wiping away dust, tightening screws, all while glancing at the child's face as if making sure each breath was still there. This was what he did at 2 a.m. every night, not resting, not sleeping, not escaping. He was fighting for his son, fighting for one more day, one more morning, one more chance at life. Elena felt her chest tighten with a guilt she didn't know she carried. She had seen his worn shoes, his tired posture, his thinning frame during working hours. She had assumed he was simply slow or careless, never imagining he was carrying a life-or-death battle on his shoulders. Her eyes burned as she watched the man work with trembling, desperate hands. Every movement spoke of a father who refused to give up even when the world already had. She stepped back into the cold corridor, her mind spiraling through the last year of budget cuts, late-night reports, and strict policies she had put in place, policies that unknowingly affected men like Samuel who were simply trying to survive. She thought of her own father, now retired, who had always told her that leadership meant seeing more than numbers. "A company is built on people," he'd said, "and people carry stories you can't see." But she had been too busy proving herself to listen. The next morning, when Samuel arrived at work at 6 a.m. sharp, dark circles under his eyes and shoulders sagging, he found Elena already waiting in the hallway. For the first time in years, she didn't look like the CEO, she looked human. She looked like someone who understood. What followed was not a speech, not charity, not pity, but an opportunity. Elena quietly reassured him that he would receive full medical coverage, paid time off, financial aid for his son's treatment, and a team of specialists already contacted on his behalf. And she told him something he never expected, that his strength, his heart, and his commitment to his child reminded her of the kind of love she had once lost sight of. Over the following months, Samuel's life changed in ways he never imagined possible. His son received proper care, a new oxygen machine, and eventually surgery that gave him a real chance at recovery. The company started a new internal program for employees in crisis, built not from corporate strategy but from Samuel's story, a reminder of the humanity that existed behind every uniform, every badge, every late-night shift. Elena visited often, quietly supporting from the background, feeling her own heart heal from the connection she had once resisted. 1 year later, in a bright hospital room filled with soft morning light, Samuel's son took his first steps without support. Samuel cried openly, holding his child close as Elena watched from the doorway, her chest filled with a warmth she had never known. It was in that moment she realized the truth that had changed her life. Sometimes the greatest transformations come not from boardrooms or contracts, but from witnessing the quiet resilience of a single, ordinary person.